If you've spent any time in the bio-optimization, biohacking world, perhaps you're familiar with what's been called the Superhuman Protocol. What I'd like to do is talk about the Superhuman Protocol, let you know which areas of the protocol I agree with, which areas of the protocol that I feel like we could manipulate, but then ultimately open a conversation about individualized care, because that's where I think patients are going to get the best benefit. So I truly believe that any protocol that's going to help lead patients into an area where they're going to be focused on a multi-modality approach to healing and recovery is going to be a win-win every time. If you've seen any of my videos, you know that we've talked about a variety of different modalities that have a variety of different effects for our health and how to start incorporating them in different ways. So let's talk about the Superhuman Protocol. If you need the absolute details of the Superhuman Protocol, just Google videos on the Superhuman Protocol. I'm just using this as a place to summarize. So the Superhuman Protocol includes PEMF first, followed by oxygen therapy, specifically HBOT therapy, about a 15-minute session, followed by a session on a full body red light exposure. The frequencies of PEMF could vary. The frequencies of red, near infrared, and infrared light could vary depending on different devices. It's important that when you're looking into these protocols and procedures, you're also looking at the right equipment and using equipment that have the best frequencies of PEMF and the best frequencies of light. What I love about the Superhuman Protocol is that it's bringing the attention to this multi-modality approach to health, that there's no single answer to improving somebody's health. We often, almost always need to incorporate different therapies to get somebody where they're trying to go, whether it's away from some sort of health concern or towards some sort of bio-optimization or improved level of health. I love PEMF, and I agree in the idea of it being first in this particular protocol. I love its ability to balance the pH. I love its ability to help create improved charge within the cell, to start reducing some inflammatory response, but also to improve red blood cell health and its ability to absorb and deliver oxygen. We recommend PEMF, we use PEMF, and again, for this purpose, I love it being first. As far as the second modality in this, I would actually shift the red light into position number 2. Why is that? Because ultimately, the goal here is going to be creating an environment of healing and regeneration. And actually, what I really believe to be the driver for most of that is the oxygen. So from an oxygen capacity and delivery standpoint, I love what PEMF is going to do to help enrich and nourish the red blood cells. And then from a red light point of view, we're going to vasodilate, we're going to release some nitric oxide, and we're going to stimulate cytochrome C activity inside the mitochondria, which is one of the rate-limiting steps to ATP or energy production inside your cells. So as the red blood cells become healthier, as the vessels dilate so that you get more blood flow, and you release that nitric oxide and you stimulate mitochondrial function, those two steps are really doing a great job to prepare the body for the third step, which is oxygen delivery. We're working really hard over here at HBOT USA to make sure that all the people looking for this kind of information are able to find it. When you like it, when you subscribe to it, when you share these videos, that tells YouTube that this content is valuable. When YouTube knows this content is valuable, they tend to help other people searching similar concepts find the answers that they're looking for. So please do me a favor, like it, subscribe it, and share it so that YouTube knows how valuable the information is that we're giving you. In the traditional Superhuman Protocol, HBOT is the recommended therapy. So I've seen videos that talk about HBOT as an oxygen delivery therapy, which of course it is, and that HBOT could be considered or equivalent to even a few sessions of hyperbaric oxygen. So I want to talk about that for a little bit. Is HBOT an oxygen delivery therapy? Absolutely. HBOT stands for exercise with oxygen therapy. Using HBOT, we are using an oxygen delivery, increased and decreased percentages of oxygen on exercise equipment where we increase and decrease the oxygen intensity. So when we manipulate exercise intensity, what you're doing is you're creating increases and decreases in demand. And when you're offering oxygen to that patient, you are increasing and decreasing supply. You're creating a nice varied supply and demand type of equation. And using that, you can most certainly deliver oxygen to the tissues at higher levels because of manipulation of the supply and demand systems. What's important to note about HBOT, because it's increasing demand, what does that mean? It means that your body's working really hard. So whether most commonly used on a bike or an assault bike where you might be using arms and legs, but you could do it on many different types of equipment. As you increase your demand, you're actually driving oxygen to the working tissue. So if I'm on a bike, most or almost all of that oxygen is going to go to my legs. If I'm on an assault bike, it's going to be a mixture of getting that oxygen to my arms and my legs. But you are not really creating a surplus of oxygen that creates this ability for all of that excess oxygen to go other places. As one example, let's say to our nervous system and our brain. So for, let's say, a TBI or concussion recovery, or using it for even neurodegenerative diseases as an example, we're going to have a hard time making the argument that we're creating excess oxygen that's going to go to those other tissues. We are creating excess oxygen. However, most, if not almost all of that oxygen is going to go to the working tissues and be metabolized real time during those exposures. As a training tool, there are very few things that would be equal or even better than using HBOT. But as a healing and recovery tool, particularly if it's relating to any type of chronic illness, the goal of that oxygen therapy is to create a surplus of oxygen for reducing inflammation, for stimulating stem cells, for creating angiogenesis. And a lot of that excess oxygen that we would be getting through HBOT, again, is being metabolized real time by muscle tissue. Let's contrast that with hyperbaric. With hyperbaric therapy, it's a passive therapy versus HBOT is an active therapy. You're exercising with HBOT. You're literally laying down and you're passively relaxing during hyperbaric. Why? Because when you're exposed to hyperbaric conditions and you're being passive during that process, it just gives your body an opportunity to create a large surplus of oxygen. And you're not necessarily actively metabolizing all of that oxygen in that moment. You can create that surplus over a period of time. HBOT is relying 100% on red blood cell delivery. You're still not changing atmospheric conditions, which means while you're manipulating supply and demand, which is great, especially for training, you're never going to create that surplus of plasma oxygen, bypassing red blood cell carrying capacity. With hyperbaric, you can certainly saturate red blood cells. It will do that very easily, but it's also delivering an enormous amount of oxygen, increased oxygen, into the plasma of the body, super saturating that body with far more oxygen than something like HBOT could ever do. And so if the concern is getting oxygen into the body for healing, recovery, and regeneration, hyperbaric oxygen therapy is going to deliver far more oxygen and give the body a chance to utilize that oxygen because the body is resting passively versus exercising actively. So for those reasons, in a version of a superhuman protocol that I would recommend, especially for somebody healing and recovering, whether that's healing and recovering from exercise or healing and recovering from the stressors of life, or it's healing and recovering from some sort of chronic illness, we would use hyperbaric oxygen every time over HBOT for those purposes. And so for me, in the superhuman protocol, we would use hyperbaric oxygen therapy versus exercise with oxygen therapy. And so again, for us, it would be PEMF for a 12 to 15 minute session, red light therapy for a 12 to 15 minute session, followed by hyperbaric oxygen for a 60-minute session, delivering oxygen to a body that's been prepared for that oxygen through those other two therapies. Lastly, I just want to bring your attention to a concept of individualized medicine, because the modalities and tools that would make it a superhuman protocol for you are going to be different than the modalities and the therapies that are going to make it a superhuman protocol for me or for Mary or Steve. The idea here is that we need to know more about you and create a protocol, and not just using PEMF, red light, and oxygen. I'm sure you're very well aware of the fact that there are many modalities out there. And as clinicians or wellness studios or healthcare providers, our job is to get to know who these people are coming in looking for help and to create the protocol that they need. And so in my clinic or in clinics that we support or teach, we talk about all these therapies. We talk about protocols around all these therapies. And we talk about the information that we need to be able to gain from a client or from a patient coming in who's looking for healing and regeneration, and how to start applying these therapies in different ways so that each person gets their version of the superhuman protocol, making sure that they're getting the most from all of their bio-optimization therapies and from their time and the money that they're investing in that process. If you know me at all, you know that I love oxygen, period, end of story. Whether that's HBOT or ozone or hyperbaric oxygen or oxygen breathing at the surface, there's so many different ways we can use oxygen therapies. And I've done my best to start to compare and contrast these different therapies because they're not all created equally. They don't all have equal benefits. And it's not to say one is better than the other. I don't believe that. It's to say that different therapies are required for different goals or different health concerns. We did do an extensive video on comparing hyperbaric oxygen to EWOT, and so you can click to this other video and learn more about some of those differences, just so you get a better understanding of where they fit in the healthcare of any given client or patient.